Ladies and gentlemen, Forrest Fenn.
Thank you, Michael. That's Michael McGarrity over there. All the introductions I've had through my life, that's certainly the latest. Thank you. I don't know why I'm on this stage with these two stars. Michael was voted New Mexico's favorite writer when Tony Hillerman was still alive. And this guy's had books #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So I want to thank you for coming, and I don't know what to say. These guys here. Some of you have bought my book, I know. I hope you like it. I just have to say that my new book, I hope to be on the stands by summer. And you can leave your name with Collected Works Bookstore, and they'll call you when my book is on the shelf for sale.
Give us the title.
The title is Too Far to Walk.
Which is why he became a jet pilot in the Air Force.
And it's very similar to my memoir. I just tell a few more stories and change things around a little bit. But if you give me just a second, I'd like to introduce a couple of people here. Irene Rollins, where are you? Irene Rollins has a 30-minute radio program in Denver. She's the one that lit the fuse under my book initially. And the lady that designed my book, where are you? Susan, stand up. And the producer is Luce, sitting next to Susan there. And another person I owe a lot to is Dal Neitzel. Dal, where are you? Stand up, Dal, if you can. Thank you very much.
Well, as I understand it, you have sold 20,000 copies of this book, right? At $35 a piece. That's $750,000 worth of books. That's almost the amount of the treasure you buried. You are a very clever businessman.
But what you may not know is that I don't get a penny of the money. I don't even get my publishing costs back. I gave all the books to Dorothy and Mary, who own the Collected Works Bookstore, because I didn't want anybody to say that the treasure chest story is a hoax to sell books. But the store is putting 10% of the gross aside, and we'll spend that money where it needs to be spent with some cancer patient, we hope.
Forrest, why don't you tell these folks why you wrote this book? I mean, when you and I met on Monday, you had 3 reasons that you explained that prompted the motivation behind the thrill of the chase. Why don't you let these people in on those?
Well, I had a lady ask me that question one time. She said, Mr. Fenn, who's your audience for this book? I said, my audience is every redneck in Texas that lost his job, has a wife and 12 kids, and doesn't know what to do with his time, but he likes adventure. I said, put the gas in the truck, get your sleeping bag, and strike the trail. That's who I wrote the book for, and that's my chest is fan. I hope it'll be somebody like that. But certainly a secondary motive was to the fact that we've got a problem in this country today with our children. We're obese, we text too much, we sit on the couch and watch TV or down in the game room. I would like for all the parents to get their kids out in the mountains to smell the sunshine and see what it's really about. And I think that's important. The kids that we see today are going to be president in our legislatures 25 years from now. And we need to be grooming those people.
Yes.
But another reason, a tertiary reason, was that I've had so much fun over the last 70 years collecting things. And when I was told that I had a 20% chance of living 3 years, I told myself, if I've got to go, I'm just going to take it with me. That's when I bought the treasure chest. I paid $25,000 for that treasure chest. And I started filling it up with valuable things. You know, you can't get very many valuable things in a chest that's 10 inches by 10 inches unless they're gold. And so I started buying coins and gold nuggets. I wanted the chest to be worth looking for. And I wanted, I've said before, when somebody finds that chest and they open it for the first time, they're just gonna, well, these two guys have seen the treasure chest, right?
That's right, yeah. And in fact, I can vouch for it. I know that a number of newspapers have questioned whether this maybe isn't some kind of publicity stunt, because the treasure really exists. And I remember, it was about, I think 20 years ago, you told me the story about how you were going to bury yourself with the treasure. And then,
Which would have been very interesting to see.
yeah, I said, how are you going to do that? He said, well, I'm working on it. It's a difficult problem because you can't tell anyone. You can't have anyone help you because who knows, they might come back and rob.
The trouble with you guys is you have no imagination.
I'll never forget when you took me into your vault and you said, I'm going to show this to you. And here's this little box. You wouldn't believe how small it actually is.
The box itself is beautiful.
It's a gorgeous box. I mean, it's, what is it, Renaissance? It's absolutely gorgeous. And he opened the lid, and this dazzling gold. I mean, it just hits you between the eyes. You can't believe what you're looking at, but it wasn't just gold. It was jewels, gemstones, all scattered about. I mean, this is not, nicely put together. It's just heaped in. It's like a real pirate treasure. And on top of it, I remember the most vivid thing in there was this enormous gold nugget about the size of a hen's egg that came from Alaska. I mean, you pick it up and the weight of it, the coldness of it, the brilliant yellow of it, boy, it really does something to you. Because of course, my God,
That nugget has been missing since Doug's visit to the vault.
Of course, did have some things in that box which I don't think he buried. For example, in the box that I saw originally, taken out, I think, was a brick of bills, currency, paper money, $1,000 bills. Forrest had collected $1,000 bills and had banded them up and put them in this box.
Is there anybody here now that doesn't believe that Forrest has a treasure box buried somewhere? There's one person who doesn't believe in the back. Okay, only one person doesn't. I've seen the treasure too.
Now wait just a minute, Mike.
I'm sorry.
I've never said that the chest is buried. I've said that I hid the chest. That doesn't mean that it isn't buried.
Okay, all right.
But I just didn't want to give that clue.
You didn't want to give the clue until now.
The chest weighs 42 pounds, and very interesting, I think, a lady wrote Gal Neitzel an email. She said that she was in the grocery store. She knew that the treasure chest weighed 42 pounds. So she saw a bag of dog food there that weighed 20 pounds. So she put one on top of the other and tried to lift it. She couldn't lift it. So I think she decided she wasn't going to look for the treasure chest.
That's right.
Are we ready to take some questions?
Well, I don't know. I have some questions for Forrest before we
let you do that.
If I don't have an answer, I'll just make up one, okay?
But, well, it isn't so much a question as an elaboration. You originally had a different plan about what to do with this gold, and it involved yourself. Do you want to tell people about that? Because I think that's really interesting.
You're talking about bones?
No, I'm talking about burying yourself with your gold, or not burying, or.
Let me tell you, when your doctor tells you have a 20% chance to live, it's too late to buy insurance. And I told Ralph Lauren came in my house one time, and I had something that he wanted to buy. And I said, I don't want to sell it. He said, well, you can't take it with you. And that's when I decided that maybe I can take it with me. That's a true story. And I started filling that chest up with different things, that go to gun shows and arrowhead shows and Indian shows and buy gold nuggets. I mean, gold's valuable. I mean, it costs a lot of money. It was such a thrill for me over the many years to collect these things. And I thought it would be terrible to die and you become nothing but a word after that. But why not hide something that's valuable enough to make people want to go look for it? And let's start another fire, let them go looking for it. I mean, I had so much fun doing it, why not let them do it? That's my philosophy. Of course, I ruined the story because I didn't die.
One of the things that struck me about this whole thing, getting started with it years ago, was that, and I know you disagree with me on this, I think you do anyway, that there's a legendary quality to this. I mean, there's the legend of the lost Dutchman mine. There's all kinds of legends. The legends of the treasure buried in Victoria Peak on the missile range down the Tularosa Basin. And you've said you don't care whether it's found next week or 10,000 years from now. You don't care. So in a way, doesn't this sort of become the legend of the Fenn treasure chest that is going to have a legacy that goes way beyond any of our lifetimes, even if it is found?
Well, this is not a spring break thing for me, or a weekend picnic with the kids. I'm thinking 100 years, 1,000 years down the road, maybe longer. And I've been on the Today Show, I guess 3 times. They want me to give a clue once a month for the next 8 months. And I told them that I would do that, but I wasn't going to give a clue that would help anybody find anything. The first clue was that the treasure chest is hidden more than 300 miles west of Toledo. And then I said that it's more than 5,000 feet above sea level. And it's in the Rocky Mountains, but every mountain in the Rocky Mountains is above 5,000 feet. So I'll do that. And Matt Larrick called me on the phone. He said, "Where's the treasure?" I said, "The treasure's where you find it."
One of the things that I've heard is that all the graphics in this novel, in this book, well, maybe it is a novel, maybe it's part fiction, we'll call it a memoir. You're going to kill me. I've got security here, so be careful. But one of the things that I've heard is that people are now looking at all the graphics in the book and trying to use those as a way to figure out clues to the story. Can you tell the audience if there's, excuse me, any truth to that?
Well, you can blame Susan Caldwell for that, because she put these little postmarks around my book. Those that have the book have seen those little postmarks. Lots of people think those are coordinates. They draw lines. Figure out how to arrange those and take them to the treasure. The treasure is not easy to find, but it certainly is not impossible. The person that finds that treasure chest is going to have to figure out the clues and walk right straight to it. They're not going to happen on that treasure chest.
Well, that's very interesting. Speaking about looking for the treasure, how many emails have you gotten since you started this project? And can you share with us some of the really interesting, weird, and frightening experiences you've had with people looking for your treasure?
Well, I passed 16,000 emails. And until about a month ago, I responded to the first one I got from a person. Those that keep writing me back, then I scan them, but I don't have time to do all that. But I get some hate mail. I had a stalker at my house. I dialed 911, and the police came over and arrested him. And Peggy and I have a neighbor that called me on the phone and says, "What's this about it?" He says, "There's 2 guys digging up my yard." And I said, "What are they digging up your yard for?" She said, "But they're looking for a treasure." I said, "Tell them that it's north of Santa Fe, not in downtown Santa Fe." But what's rewarding for me is probably I have 8,000 or 9,000 emails that say, "Mr. Fenn, we know we're not going to find a treasure, but thank you for getting me and my kids out of the game room and out into the mountains."
All right.
I'd like to open it up for questions now from the audience. So
I will repeat the questions. So, yeah.
Is it going to be tax-free?
Is it going to be tax-free?
That's between you and the IRS. Earned income is never tax-free.
Is there an active GPS on board? I mean, how else would you know if someone has found it?
Is there an active GPS on board, and how will you know that someone has found the treasure?
How else?
How else would you know?
Well, I don't want to answer either one of those questions. But I know that the treasure is still where I hid it.
Can I ask a question? Have you checked? Did you check?
I said I know that the treasure is where I hid it.
Watch it, Doug, or it'll kill you before the night is over, too.
I was at Jackalope one time, and there was this married couple, and they had like 12 kids. And they named every one of them after somebody in the Old Testament, you know, and they had these 2 big dogs. And I just had this vision of a family like that, you know, way out in the wilderness, and then all of a sudden there's a tree, and then there's a little sign that says, "This is it." Like, did you put a little sign so that they knew?
Did you put a sign above the treasure saying you found it? So that someone will know that they found it.
No.
Thank you.
When somebody finds that treasure chest and puts it on their lap and raises the lid,
Yeah.
I think they're going to be impressed. Let me say this: it's a beautiful treasure chest, and it has a key to lock it. But I didn't want to lock it because if somebody found it, I didn't want them to take a crowbar and pry it open. So I put the key inside the chest. It's not locked.
It is now, Forrest.
You want to tell us how you know?
No, let's just keep the mystery going. I mean, that's what I do. I write mysteries. This lady had a question.
You keep talking about this box, the treasure chest, but you don't say what it's made out of or what it looks like.
Read the book.
So the question is, what is the treasure chest made out of? What does it look like? And where and what's the dating of it? Tell us a little more about the chest.
Well, the chest is 10 inches square and about 6 inches high, and it weighs 42 pounds. It's a beautiful cast bronze treasure chest. It won't rust. Nothing can hurt bronze unless you melt it down or beat it with a sledgehammer. So it's going to be there for a long time.
Is it Italian, or how old is it?
It's a lot of you here probably know Gene Thaw. Gene Thaw told me that he thought it was 12th century. Probably held a Bible at one time or a book of days. That's what I said in my book. And I really don't. I'm not that much of an expert, but it's the most beautiful chest that I ever saw, and I paid about twice what it was worth. Sometimes you have to forget those things, but the good thing it is that when I gave this guy twice what it was worth, I paid $25,000. He spent the money, and I have the chest. So I figure I'm way ahead of him.
You don't have the chest.
So you're saying the chest itself is an artifact? Very much.
You're saying the chest itself is an artifact or part of the treasure.
It's a piece of art, really, more than an artifact. But I started. I put a lot of things in that treasure chest that were very dear to me. The rope bracelet has fit my hand perfectly. It was found by Richard Wetherall. First time he climbed down a mountain and into a pueblo before the turn of the last century. It has 22 little turquoise disc beads in it, and it's worth about $600. It's the cheapest thing in that. And I tell people that if you find a treasure chest, please bring my bracelet back and I'll buy it for you. I'll give you more than it's worth. But I also put a lot of other things in. There's a necklace, a Sinew and Tyrona necklace that's 2,000 years old. It has about 25 fetishes made out of quartz crystal and cornelian and really great things. There are two little ancient Chinese carved jade figures. There are 3 or 4 pre-Columbian gold figures, frogs, and pre-Columbian gold bracelets. There are 2 what they call pre-Columbian mirrors. They're about this big around. About 1,800 years ago, somebody found a nugget and they hammered it flat. I mean, wonderful things in there, and also a 20,000 word autobiography. I figure the guy that finds that treasure chest 600 years from now is want to know something about the idiot that hid that thing.
How did you come by the pre-Columbian articles?
How did you come by the pre-Columbian artifacts?
God, I've had those, I don't even know. I've had them 30, 40 years. But when I closed that chest when I put that bracelet in that treasure chest, was the last thing to go in there, and I closed that lid, I felt that a part of me was going in that chest too. I mean, I wanted it to be part of the treasure chest. And the things that I put in there are some of the things that I had were more dear to me than most of the other things that I had.
I have a question over here.
Where did you buy the chest and when?
Where did you buy the chest and when? And do you have a receipt? And can she see it?
I went into Walmart, and I bought it from a museum director. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it was perfect for what I needed. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the size of the chest and all of the things that are in it. It sounds like a magical chest.
Yes.
Is it bigger on the inside than on the outside?
Yeah, it's bigger on the inside than the outside.
How many people here have or plan to search for the chest?
Wow.
Forrest forgot to tell you that this offer is only good until Tuesday.
Be careful, this guy's trying to get the popcorn concession.
So Forrest, has anyone ever gotten close to finding it?
I don't know what you mean by close, but I know people have been within 500 feet. There are 2 different parties that have figured out the first 2 clues correctly and went right past the treasure chest because they didn't have the others.
Wow.
How many people are going to be searching now?
Assuming you are still alive and compos mentis, will you know when this treasure is found, if it is found within those parameters?
The question is, do I know?
Will you know when the treasure is found if you're still alive?
The kind of guy that's going to find that treasure chest is the kind of guy that can't keep it quiet. But you know, there's no way to know. Somebody could find a treasure chest and everybody goes searching for the next 1,000 years. I can't say positively that I will know when somebody finds it. I think I will.
Way in the back here.
Since you said that
You're going to have to speak up, sir.
Since you said that you don't really, it doesn't matter to you so much if somebody finds it sooner or 10,000 years, how are you thinking about these clues? How much information to reveal in the clues?
Well, he was saying that given that someone could find it 10 years from now or 10,000 years, how much information is in the clues? How hard are those clues?
The clues are difficult, and I designed it that way. That poem is not something I wrote one afternoon. I worked 15 years on that poem. From 1988 until, well, for 15 years. I'm not very good at geography, but... I tell people that I didn't really write that poem, I crafted it. And I changed it. I changed it continuously for a long time.
Forrest, your new book, I'm kind of hoping that maybe there'll be some pictures in it of some of the treasure items. There aren't very many pictures around about of these wonderful objects. We hear about them, but we never see them.
He said, in your new book, will there be any pictures of some of the treasure items? Because there don't seem to be that many pictures around of the actual items in the chest itself.
I don't have any pictures other than the three that Addison Doty took from me. He was a professional photographer that took those 3 pictures from me. I don't have any photographs of the things that are in that I'm sorry, I don't.
I understand your question. I must tell you, I think Doug was very eloquent in describing what he saw when he saw that treasure for the first time. It is mind-boggling. It is like history is surrounding you when you look into that treasure box, because you're going to see all sorts of objects that represent so much of mankind and so much of civilization around the world. So I can understand your desire to see it, but I can only say that those of us who have been lucky enough to see it know how absolutely incredible it is.
Yes, and the last time I was in Forrest Vault, it wasn't there, so it's somewhere. It's gone.
Let me say something about that. I hope my wife isn't listening. My wife didn't know that I was writing the book. Some of the stories I wrote a couple of years ago, like my war story, My War for Me. But most of the book I wrote in 6 weeks. I had it in my mind, but not on paper. And my wife caught me walking out of the basement with a picture of her that I wanted to put in the book, and she asked me where I was going with her picture. So I had to tell her that I'd finished my book. And but she doesn't know. Within 2 years of when I hid the treasure, the treasure chest is 10 inches by 10 inches, and I've written 2 books that are 10 inches by 10 inches. So I had a big handkerchief covering the treasure chest in my vault. So when I took the treasure chest out and hid it, I replaced it with a stack of my books that are the same height as the treasure chest, and I put the handkerchief back over it. One day she went in there and pulled the handkerchief off, expecting to see the treasure chest, and she saw a stack of books. That was the first time that she knew it was gone. Are you going to deny that that's true?
All right, we got the final word on that one, didn't we?
Mr. Fenn, could you please tell us a little bit more on this story, which I found fascinating in your book? It took place in Vietnam, I think it was Vietnam, and when you went back in a helicopter to that place by the waterfalls, you tripped over that piece of aluminum. That's my favorite part in your book.
That's boy, that's a really nice question. He's asking, in your book, his favorite part was when you went back in a helicopter in Vietnam to the site where your plane went down and you tripped over that piece of aluminum. Would you tell that story for everyone to hear?
Well, it's a long story. It's 7,500 words in my book. But there was a waterfall in Vietnam that I flew over the first time I was going to North Vietnam. Was a dangerous country for a pilot. And I flew over that waterfall. I saw it come under my left wing and disappear behind me. And I told myself, if I get back from this mission, I'm going to come down there and say hello to you. You bring me back, and I'll come back. I'll come out and thank you. So the story goes on and on. Finally, I was shot down once, and I was shot down again. And I felt like I owed something to that waterfall. So I talked to an Army acquaintance of me. He had a helicopter, and I talked to him into taking me out there. And we walked over to the waterfall. It dropped 150, 200 feet, and it dropped so far that the water turned to mist before it could hit the bottom. It was a beautiful place. Birds were circling. Really a nice place. And we sat down on the edge and threw rocks over waterfalls for a little while, and I promised the pilot that I wouldn't stay but 5 minutes because this was enemy country and we didn't know helicopters make a lot of noise. So he said, let's go, and he jumped up and started walking back to the helicopter. And I was following him, and I tripped over something, fell flat on the ground. I don't ever remember falling flat on the ground before. When I raised up, I saw a very dirty, rude aluminum grave marker. And it had a French soldier's name there and blah, blah, blah. Evidently these, and then we looked around, there were a lot of them. I don't know how many because we didn't stay to look for them, but what I tripped over was a stone marker laying flat on its face. And I turned it over and it said, very poignantly in curved letters in English, a Frenchman's name, and then it says, if you should ever think of me when I have passed this veil and wish to please my ghost, forgive a sinner and smile at a homely girl. And I thought that was, I thought about taking it, but I decided not to, but I put it back down, I covered it over with grass so nobody could see it. But and that starts me on a philosophical road that changed my life. And I tell that story in my book.
How long ago did you hide the treasure?
How long ago did you hide the treasure?
What?
How long ago did you hide the treasure?
April of 14th, 1946. No, it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago.
Mr. Fenn, when did you get your medical diagnosis? How long ago?
My medical diagnosis was in 1988.
Hey, gentleman in the back. At the time you wrote the
Need to speak up, sir.
At the time you wrote the poem, did you already know where you were going to put the treasure?
At the time you wrote the poem, did you know where you were going to put the treasure?
Sure. Absolutely. And that never changed.
So that was the first decision you made, was where it would go. The first decision you made about this treasure was where it was going to go. You knew where it was going to go.
That had to come first.
Does anyone besides you know where it is?
Does anyone besides you know where it is?
Nobody knows but me. The mafia has a saying, 2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead. And, there's no way that I would tell anyone.
What if, you had said earlier that your favorite scenario would be a working fellow with a pickup truck and a bunch of kids getting out and finding the treasure, and that would please you the most. That would really please you the most. What if some multimillionaire decides that he or she, because it doesn't necessarily mean that a man is going to find this treasure. A woman may be smart enough to do it, or smarter than a man. Right? What if she goes out and hires herself a group of searchers? Because this is just a fun, wonderful, sort of recreational thing to do. What would you think about that?
Well, he probably doesn't have a pickup truck. You know, that
Would it bother you? But would it bother you?
everybody's different. That's what makes it so good.
So how would you feel if Gerald Peters found the treasure?
I don't think Jerry has time.
I just bought another restaurant.
So, was this a place that you, the place that you chose to put the treasure? Was it some place that you thought was just very beautiful and you wanted, you know, it just opened your heart and you thought this is, you know, it inspired you to put the treasure?
Madam, I could walk right straight back to that treasure. It's in a very special place.
Yeah.
To answer your question, yes.
Yes.
How far from a road, like if you got out of your car, how far
If you got out of your car, how far from the road is it?
I've got 31 emails from people that tell me they found a treasure chest and it's in their possession. So I write them an email back and say, will you sell the bracelet back to me? And they say, what bracelet? So some people need attention, and I think that's why they do that. And they go on and on very elaborately about how much gas it took to get there. And,
Forrest, all she wants to know is how far should she have to walk from her car to find the treasure. She wants to know whether she's going to get in her car, drive to the spot, and walk for a long time or a short time.
I recommend you get out of your car. I'm not going to give any more clues if I can help it. I wish this guy would go home.
Yes.
Speaking of attention, what does your family think about all this?
What does your family think about all this?
I haven't told them yet. Don't ask my wife or my kids or my grandkids there. But my wife has been supporting me. In December, we will have been married 60 years. If you can imagine 60 years with me, she's put up with quite a bit. But I have to say, she has never denied me anything that I really wanted to do. And I don't know how many
Well,
wives.
there she is, Peggy Fenn.
She's okay for a first wife.
She makes a good hand, doesn't she?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
I have an idea that I think is at least worth a gold nugget. I don't want the gold nugget, I just think it's worthy. I have this idea to help people that are trying to finish high school and college. And I want to call it EMT Math, Emergency Medical Tutors. And you could get a whole bunch of people, like retired landfill scientists and all kinds of people, and you could send them to different places where people are struggling, like maybe they want to get in nursing school and they can't get through the algebra, for example. So that's my idea, EMT Math.
She has an idea called EMT Math.
We can use Forrest's book as part of the.
Well, it wasn't a
Part of the
question.
what?
It was a description of an idea.
An idea.
Yeah.
To teach math, to teach emergency math. But maybe, using the design elements from the book, we could come up with mathematical formulas, and the kids could try to learn how to solve the treasure, find the treasure by solving math problems.
Fibonacci.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
This bracelet that you are so fond of, did you wear it at one time? Was it yours? And is it a male or female type bracelet?
She wants to know if you once wore this bracelet, was it yours? And if there's this bracelet that you mentioned, did you ever wear it? And is it a male or female type bracelet?
That's Forrest. We'd really like to know about that.
I'm afraid to ask you a question. But it's the only Indian bracelet that I ever had that fit me perfect. And it was thin and small. And I wore it to Indian shows in different places. Everybody wanted to buy it.
Okay. So there may be a picture out there of you wearing
But
it.
when I got it, and when Richard Wetherell discovered Mesa Verde and climbed into the Pueblo for the very first time, he picked up those 22 little turquoise disc beads. In 1903, an Indian working for him made the bracelet for him. And when Fred Harvey died, the bracelet, along with a lot of other things, were acquisitioned into the Heard Museum in Phoenix. I won the bracelet playing pool with Byron Harvey, which was an heir of Fred Harvey's, great grandnephew or something. That's how I got the bracelet.
Oh my. Very good. Thank you.
Wow.
Great story.
Do we have any other questions? Sorry. Oh, there. You, my wife?
Oh, no, way in the back. Okay, go ahead.
All right, stand up and tell it and ask the question.
My question, I think you already answered. For those of us of a certain age, is there an upper age limit that's beyond which you shouldn't be scrambling around looking for your treasure?
He wonders if there's an upper age limit beyond which you shouldn't be scrambling around looking for the treasure.
All he needs is his doctor's note.
Well, you know, it's not the age, it's the mileage that counts. Some people have too many miles on them to go looking for it, but you look like you could handle it.
And get a note from your doctor.
This is a little serious, but do you think your experiences in Vietnam, while you were, you've been shot down at one point, and you're underneath a tree thinking about how to survive this, whatever it is, do you think that deep down, this had something to do, led you to come to this point of archaeology and hidden treasure, and I'm going to do something in my life?
Well, the question is,
It's a complicated question.
It's a good question. Do you think that your experience in Vietnam, when you were shot down, and under, in the forest under those trees, had something to do with your later interest in archaeology and treasure and art?
First of all, we got to learn to leave people alone in this world. But I don't think it had anything to do with that. I'd been on the ground. I was shot down just before dark, and about 3 hours later, there were three B-52s took off from Guam and flying over Vietnam, and they salvaged 315 750-pound bombs.
Wow.
They drop them one at a time. Click, 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 click. So the noise just goes on forever. I said in my book that I think a lot of people were killed in Vietnam by noise. And I said that if that happened, I thought the rescue people were dropping flares looking for me.
Yeah.
Because it just lit up the sky. And then about 3 or 4 seconds later, the trees just laid down. Limbs are breaking. And the bombs are blowing trash and rocks way up at 10,000, 15,000 feet. And 5 minutes later, that stuff's falling on me. And the noise was so terrible that I told myself if it happened again, I might not survive that. So I got down between two big logs. And it occurred to me one more time that night. And I told myself, if I see the light, I'm gonna dig myself in and cover up my ears as much as I can, and try to survive that thing. I mean, war is a terrible thing, and it's terrible. It's overrated. I wouldn't do that. We've got to learn to leave people alone in this world.
Thank you.
Elements that could affect it, or somebody building a bridge, or how do you know it's going to be safe and secure where it's hidden?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, how do you know that the treasure is going to be safe and secure where it's hidden for the next 1,000 years? That somebody might not build a bridge or dig, or some natural event might occur that might expose it?
That's always possible. Forest fires, earthquakes, mudslides, floods. What you see is what you get. We have no control over that, but I think the aura of it will always be there. It's not likely, but it certainly could happen.
So I really appreciate, I think it's terrific trying to get kids out into the mountains, especially the teenagers, because I think it's an experience that a lot of kids don't have. But I guess one question I would have is, if you look at some people who've been looking for the treasure, you've got professional treasure hunters, cryptographers, professional archaeologists. How would you encourage kids to be able to let them believe that they can go find this treasure?
Well, the question is that there are a lot of people, adults looking for the treasure. You got professional treasure hunters, maybe archaeologists and others. And but how can you encourage kids to think that they might actually find it and to get out there and look for it?
You know, I don't think it's to me, it's not as much encourage them to go look for the treasure. Let's encourage them to get out of the house, get out of the game room, experience. You know, I got an email from a father who was going to take his 3 kids out. He said that they were outdoorsmen. They knew everything about the outdoors. And I asked him, I said, which way does an ant circle a tree when climbing in the southern hemisphere? They couldn't answer. I said, well, then you're not out in the countryside. How can you look at a pine tree, the trunk of a pine tree, and tell whether it's growing or not? If you can't answer those questions, you need to get outside more. There's so much to be learned in the mountains and in the trees.
In the mountains, Forrest, in the mountains. Now this, you said the treasure was buried somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. You said it was hidden somewhere. Sequestered, perhaps, is a better word. So basically, these folks shouldn't be looking for the treasure like around Clovis, should they? or Denver.
If you're serious about looking for the treasure, read the book. And then go back and read the poem 8, 10, 12, 15 times. And then go back and read the book again slowly, looking for hints in the book that are going to help you solve clues in the poem. You're not going to happen on the treasure chest.
Look at the first letter in the first sentence of every
There's one over there.
Hey, Doug.
I am.
So I have a question for you, Forrest. You are a true adventurer, and I know you've got to be intrigued by all of these people who are following you on the internet, who are in chat groups, who are talking about their treasure hunting after this. How tempted are you to kind of follow along, and are you chasing them? And I think the chase is what really drew you to this whole adventure.
Well, it's she asked, you're an adventurer, and you've got all these people here who are following you, who are chasing you, and are you also kind of chasing them? Are you also sort of, is that
following them on the internet?
Following them on the internet and then following their discussions and everything on the internet.
It's kind of like, are you following the treasure hunters? Is that kind of an adventure that you're on?
Well, there are a number of blogs out there. I can't even count how many. There have been probably 15 or 18 documentaries been made. The Japanese here now, they're making a 50-minute documentary. But there's a quote in the new book about Joe Devine. They never knew that it was the chase they saw and not the quarry. Are you with me on that?
Yes. Yes.
There are a lot of rewards in just searching.
I appreciate the sense of intrigue this is all created, but I worry about the unintended consequences of avarice and disrespect of our properties, trespass and so forth. Can you comment about that?
He worries about the avarice that this might be arousing and encouraging people to trespass. Is that right? Okay.
I'm not encouraging people to trespass.
There's another person. Yes. Louder, please.
During the fires of 2 years ago, the Pacheco Canyon fire,
During
did that make you nervous?
during the fires. During the fires of 2 years ago, the Pacheco Canyon fire, did that make you worried? Nervous?
Sure, because I have a son-in-law that has a ranch up there.
Let's take a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of close it down. There's another lady there, yes?
What was your favorite hiking area that
My favorite hiking area is Pueblo Mesa, and I can talk to you about that later.
I'll tell you mine too if you'd like to know. But I have a feeling you want to know his favorite hiking area. Forrest, what is your favorite hiking area?
My favorite hiking area. My favorite hiking area, you know, I don't have them listed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think I've done more hiking in my life in and around Yellowstone Park than any place else. But I've been all over New Mexico. I mean, I've got a couple of buddies that I used to hike all day long with. And I love that. I mean, I was with a guy one time and he picked up a Colt pistol, fully loaded Colt pistol. It'd been there so long that the wooden handle was completely gone.
Well, that's amazing. All right, right here.
Do you have a better life if you had a treasure?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Did you have a better life if you had a treasure?
Would you have a better life if you had the treasure?
I did have a better life when I had the I didn't mean to belittle your question, but let me tell you something. Having enough money is a lot better than having a lot of money.
Very good.
Forrest, who cuts your hair?
Who cut your hair?
I don't want to tell you because you'll make an appointment and I won't be able to get in. My hair was cut by Georgie. Anybody know Georgie?
One more question.
She's a great lady. She collects marbles.
Which is what you collected as a boy. You collected marbles.
What'd that guy say?
Did you collect marbles?
You collected marbles as a boy.
I used to make marbles.
And collect them too.
Sure, I collected marbles. I could make a marble in Spanish class before noon. I could sell it for a dime, and that was a bag of Fritos and a Coca-Cola. Lunch didn't get any better than that for me.
I've seen his CIA file. This is all true. It's all true. One more question?
Can you tell us if the treasure is in New Mexico?
Can you tell us if the treasure is in New Mexico?
No, ma'am.
All right, now.
Thank you.
I'll tell you that it's in the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe.
Well, Forrest, is there a piece of wisdom that you would like to leave this incredible group of people with as a final parting shot?
Well, do what you can with your life. Any part of some is better than no part of any.
Thank you very much, Forrest. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There are books to buy, so have fun. Collecting books, bookstore.